Roy Rogers. Just hearing his name takes us back to the golden age of westerns. The cowboy hat, the trusty horse trigger, and that unforgettable smile. He wasn't just a star, he was a legend, winning hearts in movies, TV shows, and even with his music. Fans loved him so much that a museum was built to honor his incredible life and career. But now, that museum has been shut down for good. What happened? Why did it close? And what does it mean for the legacy of the King of the Cowboys? Join us as we take a closer look at the star's journey, the rise and fall of the Roy Rogers Museum, and uncover the real reason behind its permanent closure. From humble beginnings to life on the river, Roy Rogers, born as Leonard Franklin Sly, came from a working-class family in Cincinnati, Ohio. His parents, Mattie and Andy Sly, lived in a small tenement on 2nd Street. Years later, that same spot would become Riverfront Stadium, where Roy often joked that he was born at second base. Roy had 3 sisters, Kathleen, Mary, and Cleta, and they all grew up in a modest home with big dreams. Roy's father, Andy, wasn't happy with his job or the busy city life, so he and his brother Will built a houseboat using scrap wood. In 1912, they set off with their family on a journey up the Ohio River, looking for a better life. They eventually settled in Portsmouth, Ohio, hoping to build a house. But nature had other plans. The Great Flood of 1913 hit the area hard, forcing the Slys to move their houseboat onto dry land. Surprisingly, it became their permanent home. By 1919, the family bought a farm in Duck Run, a small area near Lucasville, Ohio. They finally had a place to call their own and built a 6-room house. However, farming alone couldn't support them. Roy's father found a job at a shoe factory in Portsmouth and had to stay there during the week. He would come home on weekends, often bringing gifts, including a special one that would change Roy's life, a horse. This horse introduced Roy to the world of riding and started his love for the cowboy way of life. Living in a rural area without radio or modern entertainment, the Slys created their own fun. Saturday nights were filled with music, laughter, and dancing. Friends and neighbors would gather for square dances, and Roy would sing, play the mandolin, and even call the dances. This is also when he learned to yodel, a skill he would later use in his career. Roy and his mother even used their yodeling to communicate across the farm, turning it into their own secret language. Chasing new opportunities. Roy attended high school in McDermott, Ohio, but his education was cut short when the family moved back to Cincinnati. His father had found another job at a shoe factory, and Roy knew he needed to help out. He dropped out of school and joined his dad at the factory, working long hours to support the family. Roy tried to continue his studies by attending night school, but exhaustion took over. When classmates made fun of him for falling asleep in class, he decided to quit for good. By 1929, things started to change. Roy's older sister Mary had moved to Lawndale, California with her husband. She encouraged the family to visit, so Roy and his father packed up their old 1923 Dodge and drove all the way to California. They spent 4 months there before returning to Ohio, but the dream of California stuck with Roy. Soon after, Mary's father-in-law invited Roy to travel back to California with him. He took the opportunity, and before long, the rest of the Sly family followed in 1930. They rented a small house near Mary, and Roy and his father found jobs driving gravel trucks for a highway construction project. It seemed like a fresh start, but things didn't stay easy for long. In 1931, the construction company they worked for went bankrupt, leaving them jobless once again. To make ends meet, Roy traveled to Tulare, California, to pick peaches for Del Monte. He lived in rough labor camps, much like the ones described in John Steinbeck's novel The Grapes of Wrath. The Great Depression was hitting hard, and life in California wasn't much better than back in Ohio. Roy's journey was filled with challenges and uncertainty. From the muddy banks of the Ohio River to the sun-scorched fields of California, he faced every hardship with determination. Little did he know, these early struggles would shape him into the cowboy hero the world would come to love. Roy Rogers' journey to musical stardom. When Roy Rogers, then still known as Leonard Sly, returned to Lawndale, California, he had no idea that his life was about to change. His sister Mary encouraged him to audition for the Midnight Frolic radio show in Inglewood. Roy, feeling a little nervous, put on a Western shirt that Mary had made for him and gave it a shot. He played his guitar, sang, and even showed off his yodeling skills. To his surprise, the audience loved him. Just a few days later, he was invited to join a local country band called the Rocky Mountaineers. Without hesitation, he accepted, and in August 1931, he officially became part of the group. Roy's time with the band brought new opportunities. By September, he placed an ad looking for a new member. That's how he met Bob Nolan, a Canadian-born singer who answered the call. The ad simply said, "Yodeler for old-time act to travel. Tenor preferred." Bob joined but didn't stay long, though he and Roy remained friends. Tim Spencer soon replaced him, and the band continued performing. In 1932, Roy, Spencer, and another singer named Slumber Nichols decided to break away from the Rocky Mountaineers and form their own trio. Unfortunately, the group didn't last long. Over the next year, Roy and Spencer tried their luck with several bands, including the International Cowboys and the Obaro Cowboys, but nothing seemed to stick. When Spencer left music for a while, Roy joined a popular radio act called Jack Lefevre and his Texas Outlaws. Despite the setbacks, Roy never gave up. In early 1933, he teamed up with Bob Nolan and Tim Spencer once again. This time, they called themselves the Pioneers Trio. Roy played the guitar, Nolan handled the string bass, and Spencer took the lead vocals. They practiced tirelessly, perfecting their harmonies and writing new songs. It was a fresh start, but bigger changes were on the horizon. The Sons of the Pioneers take over the airwaves. As the group gained confidence, they continued working hard to make a name for themselves. In 1934, a fiddle player named Hugh Farr joined them, adding his deep bass voice to their unique sound. Around this time, a radio announcer decided that the name Pioneers Trio didn't quite fit. Since the members were still young, the announcer suggested calling them the Sons of the Pioneers instead. The new name stuck, and audiences loved it. By the summer of 1934, the Sons of the Pioneers were becoming more than just a local act. Their music reached beyond Los Angeles thanks to short radio segments that were broadcast across the country. People everywhere were starting to recognize their smooth harmonies and catchy Western tunes. That same year, the group signed a recording contract with Decca Records, a new label at the time. On August 8, 1934, they entered the studio and recorded their first commercial tracks. One of the songs from that session was Tumbling Tumbleweeds, written by Bob Nolan. The song quickly became a hit, capturing the spirit of the American West with its dreamy lyrics and memorable melody. Over the next 2 years, the Sons of the Pioneers recorded a total of 32 songs for Decca. Among them was Cool Water, another timeless classic that showcased the group's signature sound. Their music, filled with rich harmonies and Western charm, resonated with people everywhere. The Sons of the Pioneers weren't just another band. They were pioneers in their own right, shaping the Western music genre in a way that had never been done before. Roy Rogers, once a shy young man from Ohio, was now well on his way to becoming a household name. The rise of Roy Rogers in Hollywood. Roy Rogers' journey into Hollywood began in 1935 when he landed his first film role. Back then, he was still known by his real name, Leonard Sly, and worked in supporting roles in Western films. One of his early appearances was alongside the famous singing cowboy, Gene Autry. However, in 1938, Autry asked for a pay raise, and the studio began looking for a new singing cowboy, someone they could pay less. Many hopefuls, including Willie Phelps, auditioned for the role, but it was Len who won the part. Republic Pictures decided he needed a new name, something with a Western feel. They chose Roy Rogers, combining the first name Roy with the last name of Will Rogers, a beloved Western entertainer. With his new name and starring role in Under Western Stars, Roy quickly became a matinee idol. Fans loved his charisma and talent, and soon he was competing with Autry as America's favorite singing cowboy. Roy's success continued to grow, and he even played a supporting role in Dark Command, 1940, starring John Wayne. This film also introduced him to George "Gabby" Hayes, who would later become one of his most famous sidekicks. Roy's popularity soared, and unlike other Western stars, he often played a character with his real name, which made fans feel even closer to him. The film industry took notice, and soon he became a major box office draw, standing shoulder to shoulder with Hollywood's biggest stars, breaking records and winning hearts. Roy Rogers was more than just a movie star. He became a true Western icon. From 1939 to 1954, he was listed in the Motion Picture Herald as one of the top 10 money-making Western stars, holding the #1 spot from 1943 to 1954. Similarly, in the box office poll, Roy ranked at the top from 1943 to 1952, only falling to second place in later years to Randolph Scott. But his popularity wasn't just among Western fans. In 1945 and 1946, Roy was ranked among the top 10 money-making stars across all film genres, proving he was a household name. Children adored him, and his films had a unique charm. Unlike most Westerns shot in black and white, many of Roy's post-war movies were filmed in true color, making them stand out even more. Roy's movies often included exciting moments where his beloved horse, Trigger, would have his own little adventures. The camera would follow Trigger as he ventured off, adding an extra touch of excitement and fun for the audience. With his growing success, Roy made a smart move in 1940 by adding a clause to his contract. It gave him control over his name, voice, and image for merchandising. This decision turned Roy Rogers into a brand, with action figures, adventure novels, playsets, and even comic books featuring his name. His comic book series, Roy Rogers Comics, was a huge hit, written by Gaylord Du Bois. In fact, Roy became second only to Walt Disney in terms of the number of products sold under his name. A partnership in life and on screen. In 1944, Roy Rogers met Dale Evans on the set of a movie, and their connection was instant. Their chemistry wasn't just for the cameras, it blossomed into a lifelong partnership. They eventually married and became a beloved Hollywood couple. Fans adored their wholesome image, and together they used their fame to help others. Roy and Dale were passionate about adoption and became advocates for children's charities. They adopted several children themselves and worked tirelessly to support children in need. Their faith played a huge role in their lives. In 1949, they joined the Hollywood Christian Group, a community founded by their friend Louis Evans Jr. They often attended meetings alongside famous names like Billy Graham and Jane Russell. Even as they built their family and devoted time to their charitable work, Roy continued to perform. His group, the Sons of the Pioneers, never stopped entertaining audiences. Although he was no longer an official member, they often performed as his backup band in movies, radio shows, and live performances. Roy would sometimes join them on stage, delighting fans with his unforgettable voice. Roy and Dale made their home in Apple Valley, California, where the town honored their contributions by naming streets and buildings after them. They never stopped giving back, and their kindness left a lasting impact on their community. Roy's later years and enduring legacy. In 1956, Roy and Dale tried their hand at television with the Roy Rogers and Dale Evans Show, a comedy Western variety program. Unfortunately, it struggled to compete with the Jackie Gleason Show and was canceled after just 3 months. Still, Roy remained a familiar face on TV, appearing in various guest roles on popular shows like Wonder Woman, where he played cowboy-type characters that fans loved. Roy didn't just focus on entertainment. In 1968, he licensed his name to the Marriott Corporation, which turned its chain of Hot Shops restaurants into Roy Rogers Restaurants. Though he wasn't directly involved, his name carried weight and the restaurant chain became popular. Roy returned to Texas in 1970 to headline the Texas Tech University Intercollegiate Rodeo with Dale by his side. Then, in 1975, he starred in his final movie, Macintosh and TJ, which was filmed at the historic 6,666 Ranch in Texas. Even in his later years, he remained dedicated to Western culture and storytelling. Throughout his career, Roy was more than just an entertainer. He was a symbol of kindness, integrity, and the cowboy way of life. His famous theme song, Happy Trails, written by Dale, became a farewell tune that fans cherished. Whether on screen, in music, or through his charitable work, Roy Rogers left behind a legacy that continues to inspire generations. While that was all about his career, what about his personal life? Little did Roy Rogers know that he and his partner would be known for more than just their movies. They would become a symbol of love, family, and resilience. Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, a love story beyond the silver screen. While his career brought him fame, Roy Rogers' personal life was filled with both love and heartache. In 1933, while performing with the O Cowboys, Roy received a unique request during a radio broadcast in Roswell, New Mexico. A listener named Grace Arlene Wilkins called in, promising to bake him a pie if he sang the Swiss Yodel. Amused and intrigued, Roy delivered the song, and this simple gesture sparked the beginning of a beautiful connection. Grace and Roy corresponded after their meeting, and their bond grew stronger over time. In 1936, they tied the knot in Roswell. Their marriage marked the start of a loving partnership, but life wasn't without its challenges. The couple adopted their first daughter, Cheryl, in 1941. Soon after, Grace gave birth to their biological daughters, Linda Lou and later Roy Jr., nicknamed Dusty. However, tragedy struck in 1946 when Grace passed away due to complications from childbirth shortly after Dusty's birth. It was a devastating blow for Roy, who suddenly found himself a widower with 3 children to care for. This loss left an indelible mark on his life, but little did he know that a new chapter awaited him just around the corner. A new beginning with Dale Evans. 2 years later, Roy met Dale Evans while working on the set of a film in 1944. Their chemistry was undeniable, and what started as a professional relationship soon blossomed into love. Dale became a source of strength and comfort for Roy during one of the most difficult times of his life. In true cowboy style, Roy proposed to Dale during a live rodeo performance at Chicago Stadium. The audience erupted in applause as he popped the question. The couple married on New Year's Eve in 1947 at the Flying L Ranch in Davis, Oklahoma, where they had previously filmed Home in Oklahoma. Together, they built a life centered around family, faith, and love. They welcomed a daughter, Robin Elizabeth, in 1949. Robin was born with Down syndrome, and while her life was tragically short, she passed away before her 2nd birthday. Her impact was profound. Dale wrote about their journey with Robin in her book Angel Unaware, shedding light on the joys and challenges of parenting a child with special needs. Determined to share their love with more children, Roy and Dale adopted 3 daughters, Mimi, Dodie, and Debbie, and 1 son, Sandy. Their home was filled with laughter and love, but it was also shaped by resilience in the face of loss. Life on the ranch. Roy and Dale's love for the Western lifestyle extended far beyond the screen. In 1955, they purchased a sprawling 168-acre ranch near Chatsworth, California. It was an idyllic retreat where they could raise their children and enjoy a peaceful life surrounded by nature. Over the years, they expanded the ranch to 300 acres, creating a space that reflected their shared love for horses, cattle, and wide-open spaces. The couple's bond was tested again in 1964 when their adopted daughter Debbie tragically passed away in a church bus accident. Seeking solace and a fresh start, they relocated to the Double R Bar Ranch in Apple Valley, California. This 67-acre property became more than just their home. It was a working ranch and a sanctuary for their family. Fans often visited the ranch, eager to connect with their favorite cowboy couple. The property also housed the Roy Rogers Museum, which opened in 1967. The museum showcased memorabilia from their careers, including Roy's beloved horse, Trigger, and Dale's iconic costumes. In 1976, the museum moved to Victorville, California, where it remained a popular attraction for nearly 3 decades. Faith, community, and a lasting legacy. Faith was at the heart of Roy and Dale's lives. They were active members of the Hollywood Christian Group, a community that included notable figures like Billy Graham and Jane Russell. Their gatherings were a source of inspiration and fellowship, helping them navigate the highs and lows of life in the spotlight. Roy's charitable spirit extended beyond his faith. He was a proud Freemason and a Shriner, supporting numerous charitable initiatives. In 1975, he was honored with the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite, a recognition of his contributions to the organization. Roy was also a man of many talents. He owned a thoroughbred racehorse named Trigiro, who achieved an impressive 13 career wins, including the prestigious El Encino Stakes in 1975. An aviation enthusiast, Roy piloted his own Cessna Bobcat, flying himself to events and personal appearances. In addition to his professional and personal pursuits, Roy remained a steadfast supporter of his community. He backed Barry Goldwater in the 1964 presidential election and never hesitated to voice his beliefs. Despite his fame, Roy's humility and commitment to doing good made him a beloved figure both on and off the screen. Dale once said, "I married Roy Rogers, the king of the Cowboys, and together we were known as the king and queen of the West. But to me, he was always just Rogers, the man I loved and trusted and who always stood by me." Their love endured for over 50 years, weathering every storm and celebrating every joy. Roy Rogers passed away on July 6, 1998, at the age of 86 due to congestive heart failure. He died in his beloved Apple Valley, California, where he had spent many years with his wife, Dale Evans. Fans around the world mourned the loss of the King of the Cowboys, remembering his kindness, talent, and lasting legacy. 3 years later, Dale Evans joined him, and they were both laid to rest at Sunset Hills Memorial Park in Apple Valley. Even in death, they remained side by side, leaving behind a legacy cherished by generations of fans. Their story, filled with love, loss, and resilience, continues to inspire generations. Even though Roy and Dale were gone, their memory lived on through their films, music, and the countless memorabilia they left behind. But Roy had a bigger vision, to ensure that his legacy would be preserved for future generations to experience firsthand. That dream took shape in the form of a museum, a place where fans could relive the magic of his cowboy days and see the life he and Dale built together. The rise and fall of the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum. After years of entertaining fans on screen and stage, Roy Rogers had one more dream: to preserve his legacy in a museum. This idea first came to him in 1938 when he visited the Will Rogers Museum. To his surprise, there were only a few items on display, which left him feeling disappointed. Roy, whose real name was Leonard Sly, decided then and there that he would collect and save as much of his belongings as possible, just in case he ever opened his own museum. Fast forward to the 1960s, Roy and his wife, Dale Evans, retired and settled in Apple Valley, California. It was the perfect place to turn his dream into reality. Roy opened the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum, filled with personal items from his career and life. It quickly became a popular attraction, drawing fans from all over the country. Roy himself would often ride over in his golf cart to greet visitors, always smiling and happy to share stories. However, after Roy's passing in 1998, times began to change. Fewer people were making the trip to the high desert to see the museum, and the family realized it needed a new location. In 2003, they decided to move it to Branson, Missouri, a place known for attracting tourists, especially baby boomers who grew up watching Roy's films. Roy's grandson, Dustin Rogers, took charge of the museum, while his son, Roy Dusty Rogers Jr., performed in the Happy Trails Theater, keeping his dad's music alive, a museum like no other. The museum was more than just a collection of old items. It was a celebration of Roy and Dale's life together. Fans could see their famous parade saddles, jeweled riding outfits, and even their gun collection. The museum displays were designed like an old Western town, with storefronts and props straight out of a movie set. Visitors could walk through this make-believe world and feel like they were stepping back in time. One of the most interesting exhibits featured Roy's personal belongings, from his father's tools to his mother's scrapbooks. Dale's faith was also an important part of their story, and several displays showcased her Bibles and religious items. The museum even included their breakfast table, set just as it had been in their home, making fans feel even closer to their idols. Of course, no Roy Rogers museum would be complete without Trigger, Roy's legendary horse. Stuffed and mounted in a classic rearing pose, Trigger was one of the main attractions. But Roy and Dale didn't stop there. They also preserved Buttermilk, Dale's horse, and Bullet, their beloved German shepherd. It may have seemed unusual, but to Roy and Dale, these animals were family. Despite all these wonderful attractions, some fans couldn't help but notice that the museum was more about Roy's Hollywood fame than the cowboy lifestyle itself. There were endless displays of the products he endorsed: comic books, cereal boxes, lunch boxes, and toys. From cap guns to furniture, if Roy's name could be put on it, it was in the museum. Even the iconic 1923 Dodge Roy's family used when they moved to California was proudly displayed, showing just how far he had come in life. The move to Branson and new challenges. Relocating the museum to Branson seemed like a great idea at first. The new location was bigger, with even more space to display Roy and Dale's memorabilia. There were new attractions too, like a shooting gallery with wax figures of Roy and Dale in action. The move allowed Roy's legacy to reach a wider audience. People who grew up watching the Roy Rogers Show on TV could relive their childhood, and younger generations could learn about the King of the Cowboys. Branson, with its love for country music and Western heritage, seemed like the perfect fit. However, despite the excitement, the museum struggled to attract the crowds they had hoped for. Times were changing, and fewer people were interested in old Western stars. Even though the museum was packed with memorabilia, it just wasn't enough to keep visitors coming back. Many of the younger audience didn't know much about Roy and Dale, and even longtime fans were finding it difficult to travel long distances to visit. Over time, the costs of running the museum added up. Keeping the lights on, maintaining exhibits, and promoting the attraction took a toll on the family. In 2009, after years of trying to keep it afloat, they made the heartbreaking decision to close the museum for good. The end of an era. When the doors of the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum finally closed in 2009, it marked the end of an era. Fans were saddened, but the family had no choice. The items were auctioned off, with pieces of Roy and Dale's history scattered to collectors and museums around the world. Some of the most prized items, like Trigger and Bullet, found new homes, ensuring their legacy would live on in different places. Despite the museum's closure, Roy and Dale's impact remained strong. They were more than just Hollywood stars. They represented an era of honesty, hard work, and family values. Their love story, their music, and their films continue to inspire generations. Dale once said, "I married Roy Rogers, the King of the Cowboys, and together we were known as the King and Queen of the West." And to their fans, that's exactly how they'll always be remembered. The auction of Roy Rogers' legacy. For many years, Roy Rogers was remembered as the smiling, church-going cowboy who loved his family and his fans. His image, full of warmth and gratitude, kept his museum alive even after his passing. It was hoped that in Branson, where many of his loyal fans visited, the happy trails would continue forever. But that wasn't the case. On December 12, 2009, the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum closed its doors for good. The museum had struggled to stay afloat, especially during the economic downturn. Fewer people were visiting, and it became clear that keeping it open was no longer possible. In July 2010, the entire collection was auctioned off, bringing in a total of $2.9 million. Fans from all over the country watched as pieces of Roy's legacy were sold to the highest bidder. One of the biggest sales was Roy's beloved horse, Trigger. The stuffed and mounted Palomino was bought by RFD-TV, a Nebraska-based television network focused on farming and Western culture. They paid $266,500 to bring Trigger home. The network also purchased Bullet, Roy's loyal German Shepherd, and later took both on tour to keep their memory alive. Another prized item that made headlines was Roy's 1964 Pontiac Bonneville. The custom car, designed by artist Nudie Cohn, was covered in silver dollars, chrome pistols, horseshoes, and tiny rifles, some of which were actually functional parts of the car. It sold for an impressive $254,500. Key artifacts such as newspaper clippings, Roy's memorabilia, and his famous plastic saddle were acquired by the Autry National Center, ensuring that parts of his story would be preserved for future generations. Although the museum was gone, Roy's legacy lived on through the treasured items that found new homes. Do you think museums dedicated to classic Hollywood stars should make a comeback, or has the world moved on from the golden age of Westerns? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, And stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.